Hello everyone and welcome back to another video. My name is Bethany and today I'm here to talk to you about all things wintry. That's not true, I'm just going to talk about books, but they're wintry, so I guess that's what I meant. I'm not sure if you can see it in the frame, but I've got a big stack of books here to recommend to you specifically for reading in the winter time. So I find this year especially, I've really been reading seasonally. I think it's just so nice, especially when we're stuck at home, to sit and read something that's like makes you feel more in the season that you're in, if that makes sense. So especially with winter, like it's cold outside, I live in Canada, I'm looking at like 3 feet of snow right now maybe. I don't know how big feet are, or centimeters. But there's a lot of snow, like I can't get out onto my deck. It's freezing, it's usually around 0 degrees, and there is nothing better than curling up with a mug of tea, a candle, some atmospheric classical music, and a nice wintry book. So if you live in Australia or somewhere where it is not currently winter, then this might not be the video for you, but you can save it for next year. So I think I have 11 books or series to talk about. There's a big variety, so there's a lot of YA, but there's also a lot of adult here, I think. Fantasy, I've got mystery, I've got historical fiction, and then I've got contemporary, and I think that's it. So there should be something here for everyone, and I hope that you are interested in at least one of these recommendations. Also for me, this is just an excuse to talk about all the wintry things I've been obsessed with lately, so here we are. The first one is, to me, like the quintessential winter reading, and that is the His Dark Materials series by Philip Pullman. So it's The Golden Compass, The Subtle Knife, and The Amber Spyglass. I read The Golden Compass last month for probably like the 12th time, and I'm looking forward to reading books 2 and 3. But we're also watching the show right now. So HBO did an adaptation of this, or they're doing it right now, and it is amazing. Like, the movie that they did 10 years ago was garbage, and I've been disappointed about it ever since. So to have like an actual good, faithful adaptation done by HBO, so it's like big budget, good special effects, is just like fulfilling all of my childhood dreams. So if you've never read these, read them and then watch the show and you will just have the best winter ever. The reason that these are so good for winter is that a lot of them is set up north in like Svalbard and Norway and stuff like that. It's like slightly an alternate universe, but it's still real places. So there's so much beautiful description of the northern lights, and Lyra, our main character, like goes across the ice on the back of a polar bear while the northern lights dance above her, and it's just like the most beautiful atmospheric scene. I can't say enough good things about these. There's also a companion trilogy that is coming out right now, so we're waiting for the 3rd book, and I swear if he dies before he writes it, I can't. But books 1 and 2 are really good. These are just the classics though, and even if you only read The Golden Compass, that's all you need. Next up, I have an adult fantasy, and I'm actually currently reading it. So I'm only on like page 100 now, and there's about 500 pages, but I love it already, and I feel like I'm gonna love it anyway. So here it is, I'm recommending it to you. That is Spinning Silver by Naomi Novik. This follows a girl named Miriam, who is the daughter of a moneylender. So basically she takes his job in hand because he's not doing a good job. These mythical spirits kind of take an interest in her. And then I don't know what else happens because I'm only on page 100. But it's set in Russia in winter. And Russia is like winter personified to me. I know that it's not always winter in Russia, certainly not always cold there, just like Canada, but Russian folklore is just so like winter inspired, and it's just so perfect for the season. So there's a lot on here with Russian influences, I think, but here we are. This is written like a fairy tale, which I think is also something that's perfect in the wintertime. So I would really highly recommend this. I'm looking forward to reading Uprooted, which is her other standalone adult fantasy. And yeah, seems like a good one so far. I really like the 4 first books on this stack are all different genres, so that's really fun. But next up we have In a Dark, Dark Wood by Ruth Ware. This is a mystery thriller. I would say more of a mystery because it didn't scare me. It's set in a cabin during a blizzard, so it's perfect. And it's not super creepy, so it's not going to scare the crap out of you, but it will kind of unsettle you slightly. So basically someone turns up dead, I think. Oh yeah, so 48 hours later, the protagonist wakes up in a hospital bed knowing that someone is dead, but not remembering or knowing exactly what happened or who it was. It wasn't like the best mystery thriller I've ever read, but the atmosphere was good enough that it was like, made it a good book, if that makes sense. So I really do like Ruth Ware. I think that she's a great writer. She has a book called 1 by 1 that is like, there's snow on the cover. It's super wintry. And I'm really looking forward to reading that one. I just did this one first because it was on my shelf. I'm trying not to buy new books before I've read all the ones that I have. Yeah, if you're looking for a wintry setting thriller, this might be the one for you. So a lot of these like make sense why I'm picking them for a winter recommendations list. I think all the ones so far. This one doesn't. So this is Prep by Curtis Sittenfeld. It's set at a boarding school. There's really no plot. It follows a girl named Lee, and you're literally just like watching her go through however many years at this boarding school, I think 3 or 4. And that's it. That's the whole plot. It just is so, it's not quite cozy because it's like quite an impactful, almost depressing read, but it just seems like something that would be perfect to curl up in front of the fire with. And so I'm talking about it. This book makes me cry every single time I read it. It's so, so good, and I feel like I don't hear anyone talk about it. There's also a lot of reviews of people who hate it, so there's that. A lot of people think that Lee is a very unlikable protagonist, which I think that most 14-year-olds are pretty unlikable. I know I was. So I feel like that's an unfair criticism. And it's just boring to read book after book of like superstar, wonderfully talented and nice and kind main characters. Like that's boring, unrealistic, and like boring. So I like Lee. I root for Lee. This book brought me back to some high school trauma. But yeah, I just love this. I don't know why it's a winter recommendation, but it is. Okay, now I have a historical fiction / kind of contemporary. It's set in I think the 70s or something like that. So it's kind of historical. This is The Great Alone by Kristen Hanna. You probably know who Kristen Hanna is. She wrote The Nightingale, which is another wonderful winter book if you want to cry your eyes out. But I feel like that one's super, super popular, and this one is a little bit less known. This is set in Alaska. So again, Alaska is like so wintry to me. This follows a 13-year-old girl named Lenny who moves up to Alaska with her mom and her abusive father. They don't know what they're doing to move to Alaska. Like they're not qualified to live there and like homestead basically. This is just kind of another one that follows her growing up. There's a boy involved. It says it's an epic story of human survival and love, and I'd say that's pretty accurate. The vibes are so wintry. You will be like on the edge of your seat through this book too. It's obviously not a thriller, but it's so like captivating and gorgeous. I reread this every year and it's so, so good. I can't recommend it enough. Okay, time for another Russian folklore inspired book. If you have any more Russian folklore books, please let me know because clearly I like them. But this is The Bear and the Nightingale by Catherine Arden. There's also 2 more books in a series that I can't reach right now. But I just read this one, so I'm going to read those, I think, either this month or next month. The main character in this is a girl named Vasya or Vasilisa. She grows up in like the Russian wilderness basically with her family, hearing all these stories about Russian folklore creatures. Her favorite story is about Frost, the blue-eyed winter demon. Kind of hard to explain the actual plot of this book, and I feel like it's good to just go into it knowing that it's just set in Russian winter with mythology and folklore. But I think that the whole trilogy just kind of follows Vasya coming into her own. The main criticism I've heard about this is that it's hard to follow and confusing. I think that a big part of that is that all of the characters have like 12 different nicknames, which is common for Russian things. I think that like there's lots of diminutives and lots of different ways to shorten people's names. So it is a little bit hard to follow if you don't know anything about Russian naming conventions, but I only know a little bit and I was fine. So yeah, I'm really excited to continue with this series. I read this book like in a cozy little cabin and then the morning of a blizzard, so I could not have picked a better time to read it. And if you can read it while it's snowing, you will probably adore it. Okay, this is another one. This is a YA fantasy series, and it's not overtly wintry. I just think that it gives me winter vibes. And that is the 3 Dark Crowns series by Kendara Blake. This is the first book, but I'm just missing the last one, 5 Dark Fates, because I obviously need it to be paperback so it can match these. These are about 3 queens on a island queendom. I always say kingdom and then I realize that queendom is a word. And the tradition on this island is that they have to fight to the death and whoever wins becomes the queen. It is quite dark for a YA fantasy, and the atmosphere kind of reminds me of the way that atmospheres and worlds are built in a lot of adult fantasy. So it's for sure YA, but it has some elements that make it a little bit more mature. I didn't love the last book. I found the ending was like weirdly rushed and drawn out at the same time. But the first couple books especially, and even the novella companion, Queens of Fenburn, they just are super... How many times can I say atmospheric in this video? Does anyone know a synonym for atmospheric? Other than vibey. The setting will draw you in. There, that's kind of like atmospheric. And I feel like all of the characters are super easy to root for, except maybe a few as they go on their journeys. I don't know that it ever actually snows in these books, but it feels like it does because it's just so dark and not creepy. They just make me feel like winter, okay? So read them during winter. Again with the Russia, Bethany, I'm so creative. So this is the Crowns Game duology by Evelyn Sky. These are set in a Russian-inspired medieval fantasy world. It follows 2 main characters, Vika and Nikolai, who are super powerful enchanters. They have to duel to the death to become the Tsar's enchanter. Tsar? I think I said that right. Have I said that word out loud before? Anyway, so they have to fight to the death, and then they will become like the most respected advisor to the Tsar. The characters are really well fleshed out, especially considering it's only a duology. I feel like I read these on a bus. I don't know why this is bringing me back to being on a bus, but yeah, again, it's set in Russia. There's lots of winter. There's like a remote island where Vika practices her magic. I was going to say Vasya. There is a love triangle, but it's a really well done love triangle, which I really like. You know, you can tell me that you hate love triangles, and that's a fair opinion, but I think that if they're done well, they are great. This is a very obvious choice, and that is these... Why am I holding these like this? What's happening? Okay. This is the Snow Like Ashes series by Sarah Rush. So Snow Like Ashes and then Frost Like Night and Ice Like Fire. It literally has snow in the title. Come on. This is very wintry because the main kingdom that the protagonist comes from is winter. There's these 4 season kingdoms. So even when we're not in that kingdom, we get a lot of like perspective from these people who are winter people, basically. If you've seen my latest couple wrap-ups, I talked about these a lot. So I gave the first book 5 stars. I really genuinely loved it. I gave the second book 3 stars, which was very disappointing. But then the finale got a 4 stars. So there's a lot of great messages in these books. The main character goes through an awesome and really inspiring journey. Again, there's a well-done love triangle, which I love. And yeah, again, the setting is great. I had a couple little issues with the writing, but overall, I'm glad that I read this trilogy and would totally recommend it. Just, you know, anticipate that you're going to have to kind of slog through the second book. But yeah, what's more wintry than snow and frost and ice? I don't know. Okay, my final recommendation is the Gilded Wolves series. So the third book comes out in August, and I don't think that one's wintry at all, but the second book is. Look at it. It's The Silvered Serpents. So I'm recommending this specifically because of this one, but obviously you have to read the first book first. These were one of my favorite series of 2020. So they're by Roshani Chokshi. I can't say her name. Literally every single time I film a video and I try to say Roshani Chokshi without like preparing first, I mess it up. But I just said it fine, so whatever. The first book is set in 1889 in Paris, and it's like an alternate fantasy Paris, so it's really, really cool. There's like a main cast of characters. I think there's 6 of them, and they're all so well developed. You will definitely root for each and every one of them, and they're very individual. In the first book, they are basically trying to like reclaim their place in society through a heist, or one of them is. And the second book kind of expands the world, but I can't really say what it's about, obviously. But this one's set in Russia. Are you surprised? No. The plot twist at the end, like, shook me to my core, so I cannot wait for book 3. I just also feel like even if this wasn't set in Russia, it's just kind of a more cerebral YA fantasy series. Like, you really have to think to understand these. There's, like, some puzzles incorporated into the plot, and I feel like that's a good vibe for winter. Like, it's a little heavier. It's not as light as, like, a nice, fluffy summer romance or, like, light fantasy. So again, just kind of gives me winter vibes, and I can't quite put my finger on why, but definitely would recommend these, especially because the third book is coming out fairly soon. It's a good time to get into them. So those are all of my winter recommendations. I'm excited to read a few more of like the winter inspired books on my shelves before the season ends. If you have anything else that you think I would like based on all of these, particularly Russian fantasy, I would love to hear it, and I'd love to know what you thought of any of these books. Hope you're having a great day. Bye!